Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about text language and if it's the downfall of professional communication. So I just want to start with a brief history of texting. The first text was sent in December of 1992 from a personal computer to a phone, and it did not use any form of text language or incorrect grammar. It simply said, "Merry Christmas." The first provider of text messaging services in the United States was OmniPoint Communications, but it was largely unsuccessful just because there were a lot of miscommunication between how it really worked and how much you're going to be charged for it and things like that. So moving on, I just want to talk about a little bit of the language of text. One of the first things is abbreviations, and abbreviating words is a huge part of text language. It has also created one of the biggest problems with communicating professionally. Um, and then grammar, since texting is intended to be something that is fast and easy, grammar tends to go out the window. Punctuation is also often forgotten because of the same reason that grammar has been overlooked. It's just people want to be faster, so they leave out a lot of punctuation, and it just makes for a whole mess. So what exactly is the problem? In this, I just kind of want to focus on three main points. Workplace professionalism is going to kind of be the wrap-up. The dependency on technology will just kind of be mentioned throughout this PowerPoint. And one of the first things I'm going to talk about is the falling standards of correct grammar in schools, and that involves incorrect spelling, lacking accurate punctuation. Capitalization has kind of become irrelevant to some of these students, and the context is sometimes skewed just because of certain things. So there are a lot of people who think about texting as more of a positive thing. The positive school of thought focuses on the idea of repetition. According to an article published in the International Journal of English Linguistics by Solomon Dance, I think, I can't say his name, the main thinker behind the school of thought, um, David Crystal, believes that text messaging does not really pose a threat as many fear it can. The more students write, the more they improve upon their writing skills. Therefore, its increased use rather enhances the literacy of users, especially the youth, instead of harming it. Um, Solomon also references David Crystal's book, Texting the Great Debate, which discusses in more detail why texting is not detrimental to students communicating professionally, such as things like abbreviations having always been around, so he kind of dismisses that idea just because they've always been used, and so they're not really a crucial role in why texting is destroying professional communication. So texting has its own form of grammar, or more accurately, its own lack of grammar. The article posted in Elixir International Journal by Shazia Aziz discusses the kinds of rules, or lack of rules, that text language operates under. He argues that the language of texting does not observe grammatical and syntactical rules. This is what makes it so hard for teachers to work with students on grammatical issues that overflow into their schoolwork and professional writing. Aziz makes this point: mostly, the SMS language affects aspects of learners' language proficiency, skills to express oneself eloquently through writing and skills, and ability to use words appropriately in context. John Meyer also puts it this way in his conclusion to his article, that although students are writing more than ever, they are writing with little to no depth, terrible grammar, and are abbreviating most every word they write. John Olivia also makes this point. He says, but with technology changing the way in which we write our letters, careless mistakes in spelling and grammar is often sacrificed for speed. A band-aid solution to the lack of clarity brought from hasty writings in an email message is placing too much confidence on one's spell check or grammar editing software to catch simple mistakes, but relying too heavily on spell check, the meaning of a message may be inadvertently changed. And that's kind of what I mean when I say that students are relying too much on autocorrect and spell check. Um, Most people, just because of grammar and texting and that kind of thing, they don't necessarily know how to form a correct sentence structure anymore. So they focus a lot on editing software and things like that. Like Word has not only spell check, but like a grammar check now, just that kind of thing. So where is the evidence to support all these claims? There have been several experiments conducted on spelling or grammar or how it's affected, how both are affected by texting. One particular experiment that I found very interesting was put on by Drew Singal and Shyam Sundar. And they came to the conclusion, after an in-depth experiment that approached the issue in several different ways to kind of reestablish their credibility, I suppose. They found that according to their report, they're quoted to say, "Our findings also indicate that the number of reported adaptations in received text messages was significantly related to the number of adaptations in sent text messages, as well as to grammar assessment scores." So, a multivariate regression analysis found that average sent adaptation was negatively predictive of grammar assessment score, accounting for nearly 5% of the variance in the latter. So all that fancy speak simply means that the more a student engaged in texting, the more likely he or she was to use incorrect grammar in the classroom. Students also often get so used to SMS language that they often forget that it is not actually standard correct grammar. And therein lies the problem where they can't differentiate that, oh, this is not correct grammar, because they're so used to it, and what they're used to is kind of what just sinks in and knocks everything else out. So to kind of wrap it all up, I just want to talk about kind of coming into the future and what I really mean by negatively impacting your ability to communicate professionally, and that is in the workplace. So this issue doesn't just stop at the classroom. Students at some point stop being students and are pushed into the real world, and with that comes the push into the working world. When grammar impacts a student's writing skills, it can also impact their job interview process. In an article by John Myra, he states, one student, a 15-year-old boy, wrote on his job application, "I want to be a counselor because I love to work with kids." Now this sounds fine, but he actually used the number 2 instead of the actual word to. He also used just the letter B instead of spelling out the word B. As younger generations move into the workplace, the potential for more problems related to grammar will most likely increase. There's already a problem with this that is starting to become more apparent in the workplace. Sue Schellenberger discusses this issue in her article, "This Embarrasses You and I." She states that managers are fighting an epidemic of grammar gaffles in the workplace. Many of them attribute slipping skills to the informality of email, texting, and Twitter, where slang and shortcuts are common. Such looseness with language can create bad impressions with clients, ruin marketing materials, and cause communication errors, many managers say. So this is a problem that, based on the research supporting grammar's decline in schools, is probably only going to continue. If it's a problem in school and nothing gets done to change it, or we don't focus on changing this, then it's going to become a bigger problem in the workplace. And I mean, it's so important, especially communicating internationally and that kind of thing, to use correct grammar and just be professional. It looks better, it's going to go a lot farther, people will respect you more, and there's just a serious problem on our hands with grammar, and a lot of it has to do with texting. So that's all I have for you. Yeah.